Today's outing is organized by Assistant Kim. He is a lively and energetic young man. In addition to his driving skills, he is also knowledgeable about automotive technology and used to direct student activities during his university days. The four of them traveled in a car to a refreshing suburban area, which, despite being deserted, was truly beautiful. Assistant Kim arranged their stay at a charming little hotel with a design full of greenery and openness, perfect for relaxation. They would be sharing this house with 2 rooms. Jin-soo, the younger sister, was excited about the outdoor activities, while Tae-sip maintained his usual stern expression but cooperated well with the group's arrangements. He obediently placed his belongings in the room and unpacked his luggage. Sharing a room with someone was a new experience for Tae-sip, and he felt apprehensive about potentially losing sleep tonight. Tae-soo-jin was surprised to see the small bag that Kang Min-ki-yeon brought with her. It was the first time she had seen a girl travel with such a small bag. Kang Min-ki-yeon explained that she only brought a few convenient items along with some clothes, as she wasn't concerned about fashion and was quite frugal compared to other girls. The 2 girls changed into comfortable home clothes and descended the stairs. The 2 boys were waiting for them below, now resembling typical young people without the formal attire. Kang Min-ki-yeon wore a modest, well-fitting short dress. Her elegant appearance momentarily captivated Tae-sip's attention. The mischievous younger sister teased Tae-sip by pointing out Kang Min-ki-yeon's figure, which left him momentarily flustered. Tae-jun-sip, being tactful, invited Assistant Kim to drive them to the nearest convenience store for shopping. They planned to cook their own meals and needed to buy a lot of groceries. Kang Min-ki-yeon and Tae-sip leisurely walked together. The outside scenery was beautiful, with sunlight streaming through the tree branches, and the path they took was filled with the scent of flowers. Despite traveling abroad frequently, Tae-sip had never truly shed the burdens like he felt at this moment. Beside Kang Min-ki-yeon, he felt relaxed, and the usual difficulty in his expression disappeared completely. Kang Min-ki-yeon shared childhood memories, recalling playful times with neighborhood children. They used to pick wild berries near a nearby mountain. Excitedly, Kang Min-ki-yeon cheered when she spotted a bush of ripe wild strawberries. She picked one to taste, and seeing Tae-sip's concerned expression, she offered him a ripe one. Tae-sip hesitated but eventually accepted it. However, the wild strawberry turned out to be sour and bitter, making Tae-sip grimace. Kang Min-ki-yeon laughed, apologizing for the mistake and promising to find a ripe one for him. Despite Tae-sip's reluctance, he allowed her to feed him another strawberry. They walked to the riverside, where the clear water was enchanting. Tae-sip gathered a handful of pebbles, showcasing his skill in skipping them across the water. At this moment, Tae-sip transformed into a lively boy, compensating for the dull days of his youth. The fields were adorned with flowers and butterflies in the summer sunlight. Kang Min-ki-yeon joyfully chased after insects, and Tae-sip followed her, experiencing pure happiness. This small paradise resembled a dream. Suddenly, Kang Min-ki-yeon turned back, took Tae-sip's hand, and crafted a small ring using 2 tiny flowers, placing it on his index finger. Tae-sip, without resistance, raised his finger to admire it, unable to hide the smile and the enchantment in his eyes. This was the first time Tae-sip had loosened his expression like this, presenting an entirely different side of the young director. At this moment, he was truly like any other young person, pure and gentle. Kang Min-ki-yeon was captivated by the perfect smile on his face. She bent down to pick flowers, and Tae-sip sat down beside her, his eyes glued to Kang Min-ki-yeon's lively face. They both sat down on a low hill covered in wild grass. Kang Min-ki-yeon straightforwardly expressed her desire to bring him here for complete relaxation, away from work pressures. She thanked him for accepting this trip. "It's nothing," Tae-sip replied, though in reality, the one expressing gratitude should be him. He honestly admitted that he had never experienced such joyful outings. They wandered a bit more when suddenly a rain shower surprised them. The rain made the path from the riverside to the main road slippery and challenging to walk on. Sip decisively grabbed Kong Minky-yeon's hand, pulling her up. Hold my hand. Being much taller than her, Sip possessed a masculine beauty deserving of the admiration of young girls. He didn't let go of her hand and took off his cloth jacket to shield them both from the rain. Hand in hand, they ran back towards the hotel. They stopped at a roadside bus stop, both breathing heavily. Kong Minky-yeon sat on the bus stop bench, her clothes now thin and clinging to her body. She felt both cold and embarrassed. Sip used his hand to squeeze the soaked fabric gently, carefully draping it over her. He closed each button at the top of her collar. Assistant Kim is on his way to pick us up. Just wear this for now, he said, his voice gentle for the first time. Kong Minky-yeon widened her eyes, completely losing control, innocently gazing at his face up close. Unconsciously, she reached her hand to touch his blushing face. Sip, embarrassed, pulled his hand back, avoiding a bit. Kong Minky-yeon asked, "Director, are you okay? Your face is turning red." Sip awkwardly replied, "I'm fine, I just ran, so I'm a bit warm." Kong Minky-yeon quickly raised her hand to check his temperature. "You're warm, do you have a fever, Director?" In response, Kong Minky-yeon hastily took off her shirt and handed it to him. However, Sip declined, insisting that he wasn't feverish, he was just acting a bit crazy. Right at that moment, Kim's driver stopped to pick them up. Sip sat in the car looking uncomfortable and irritated. Kong Minky-yeon covered herself with her shirt to avoid the cold. Some speed bumps made the car jolt. Sip gently used his leg to prevent Kong Minky-yeon from being pushed forward, keeping his face turned away from her. However, his hand held hers tightly, on the verge of losing control, ready to reach out and support her. They returned home, and the entire group participated in preparing dinner. Sip washed vegetables, while Kong Minky-yeon chopped food on the cutting board. Assistant Kim grilled the food in the outdoor kitchen with Soo-jin. They didn't differentiate between job positions, wealth, or status, engaging in light-hearted conversations and laughter. The scene of such a perfect family made Sip's heart truly melt. He awkwardly focused on eating while the two girls chatted animatedly. After dinner, they played board games together. Sip chose to sit next to Kong Minky-yeon and remained silent throughout the fun. Overflowing with joy in his heart, he chose to stay quiet and savor this rare warmth. Late at night, Sip stood alone on the house balcony, leaning against it, gazing at the serene night sky. In his hand was a small flower he received from Kong Minky-yeon in the afternoon, woven into a makeshift ring. He stared at it until it crumbled into pieces, yet the petals still lingered in his hand, reluctant to be discarded. Lost in thoughts, the gentle voice of Kong Minky-yeon, calling him as the director, brought him back to reality. Both of them sat outside, sipping on a few cans of Coca-Cola and chatting. Kong Minky-yeon twirled around for a moment before bringing up the main topic. She promised to help him regain the top position in the company, handle necessary tasks, and be by his side so he wouldn't have to struggle alone anymore. Sip, appreciative, felt a mix of gratitude and disappointment. He didn't expect her to stay by his side due to the responsibilities of an assistant. "Yeah, help me then," he said, avoiding Kong Minky-yeon's concerned gaze. At that moment, Kong Minky-yeon's phone rang, Hyun-seong calling. She stood up to take the call, her voice filled with excitement. Sip silently lowered his gaze, walking back to his room. On the table, there was only a half-empty drink can and a crumpled can. The next day, Sip, rejuvenated, returned to the company to lead a meeting. His smile was confident, profound, and proud, colder than usual. Perhaps he had let go of some trivial thoughts. His sharp words were like knives, quickly achieving the desired agreements. Arrogance and dominance were traits of rulers, qualities ingrained in his blood since childhood. Kong Minky-yeon looked at that cold face, relieved that she had fulfilled her duty as an assistant. However, she also felt a sense of distance. He was no longer the boy she used to have fun with. Sip, tall and slender, dressed in high-end attire, walked ahead. His long legs showed no hesitation, making Kong Minky-yeon hurry to report his schedule. In a while, at 5 p.m., there's a dinner appointment with director Kim Joon-gu from Company Q. Kong Minky-yeon hurriedly reported the densely packed schedule. She was always so meticulous, ensuring everything was arranged perfectly. After dinner is the appointment at the M Spa at 8 p.m., as you requested. Kong Minky-yeon announced the final task of his day. Seok, tired, interrupted, I know. Kong Minky-yeon hadn't yet accustomed herself to his current calm and mature demeanor. A slight feeling of confusion and mild sadness infiltrated her heart. Previously, he was just irritable and angry, now, he was cold and composed. Kong Minky-yeon recalled the tenderness Seok had shown her that day in the countryside, holding hands, taking care of her, almost like an unreal dream. She reassured herself, after all, Seok was originally such a cold and distant boss. The next day, Kong Minky-yeon, sitting in the upper row, turned around to report today's schedule. Director, at 10 a.m., you will report on the main office tasks. At 12 noon, after having lunch with Director Lee, you will move to. Seok no longer paid attention to her words. He looked at her serious face, turned away, and thought, always work, diligent, and emotionless. If she likes working like this, then let her give her all. Upon reaching the office, Seok handed Kong Minky-yeon the report file she had prepared earlier, asking her to organize it. In fact, it was already perfect for tomorrow's meeting, Seok thought to himself. He bent down to emphasize that she should redo all the paperwork. Kong Minky-yeon, never running out of energy for work, kept a smile as if the paperwork was a gift. She patiently reviewed all the documents as he had requested. After completing the task, Kong Minky-yeon presented it to the director, receiving his feedback. The original version was more complete. Extract the unedited file. Kong Minky-yeon was truly exhausted at this point, reluctantly saying yes and not forgetting to smile lightly. Seok looked at her, seemingly not tired, feeling more irritated. Late into the night, Seok and Kong Minky-yeon still hadn't finished work. Kong Minky-yeon knocked on his office door. Director, dinner is ready. She brought in her meal and introduced it as mushrooms and wheatgrass juice from Restaurant F. She prepared it as a light alternative to salad. However, Seok wasn't pleased. After tasting the first bite, he expressed his mysterious dissatisfaction. Is this Deputy Director Kang's hobby? Well, then, you should eat it. I don't want to drink this kind of wheatgrass juice. Kong Minky-yeon had a solution for everything. She gently replaced the dish with another she had prepared. This is abalone porridge I made for you. I also called a hotel to deliver it. Bon appetit. Seok went crazy over her perfection. The food and everything she did were just perfect. The food was delicious, but it drove him insane. Kong Minky-yeon returned to her room, continuing to work overtime until late. When Seok stepped out of his room, passing by her desk, he noticed that she had finished half of the rejected dinner. Seok was stunned, wondering why she would eat that for dinner. Kong Minky-yeon replied that he had told her to eat it. She seemed like a programmed machine following orders. Seeing Kong Minky-yeon's eager attitude, Seok sarcastically asked if she was doing this to make him feel pitiful. Kong Minky-yeon explained that she had to work overtime, so she ate on the spot and utilized the portion he didn't eat to save time. Seok asked if she had used the spoon he had eaten with before. She replied that she had cleaned the spoon before using it. Seok slowly picked up the glass of wheatgrass juice she had left unfinished on the table, full of frustration, and drank the entire glass of juice in his hand. Here is the translation of the provided passage into English. A drop of juice clung to his lips as he pulled out a tissue with a teasing expression. In the surprise of Kong Minky-yeon, she claimed to have drunk that cup. Seok responded, it was originally mine, implying that he wanted her to remain hungry. Seok suggested, do you want to drink more? I'll go buy it for you. Kong Minky-yeon couldn't accept a meal served by her superior, remaining silent without reacting. Unable to disrupt the balance of his secretary, Seok scolded her, advising her to finish her work well and then leave. Standing beside her, pointing at the computer screen, Seok provocatively commented on Kang Min-ki-yeon's hard work. He deliberately leaned down close to her ear, his tone full of dissatisfaction and punishment. After speaking, he left. Exiting the door, Seok felt triumphant for bullying his petite secretary. Despite her red face due to anger, she still managed to endure. That night, Kang Min-ki-yeon had to work hard to complete all her tasks. Though quite angry with Seok, deep inside, she found a way to forgive all his unpleasantness. She had promised to help him lead TK Corporation, and she would fulfill that promise, driven by commitment, responsibility, and some strange feeling gradually occupying her mind. The next morning, Kang Min-ki-yeon knocked on his office door as he was struggling with work. She informed him that the important people were ready, and both of them proceeded to the meeting room. Kang Min-ki-yeon bowed to greet the partner sitting with his head down on the large chair. "You've been waiting, sir." The tall man of similar age and stature to Seok spoke with a deep voice, slowly lifting his face. "Not at all. Hello, Director Seok, I am Min Ji-hoo, the legal representative for Resort Baeyang M&A." Another familiar voice approached, making Kang Min-ki-yeon startle. Finally, officially greeted. "Hello, I am Hoo In-sung, a lawyer from the M&P law firm." He was Kang Min-ki-yeon's close friend. From this side, Kang Min-ki-yeon was excited and joyful, while Seok couldn't hide his wary and uncomfortable expression. "Ah, meeting again," Seok replied. TK had set up a separate legal office to serve the Amanda Resort project. However, Seok was dissatisfied with the daily presence of Hoo In-sung, finding it irritating. How could they choose that law office out of so many? Feeling frustrated, it seemed like a day of work was a form of punishment for Seok. Kang Min-ki-yeon stepped out of the conglomerate building, contemplating while walking. Finally, those fleeting moments like a short dream had ended, and now she had to return to work. Currently, she is not only a personal secretary for Seok, but also assists with documents for the resort project department, which is truly exhausting. Seok, for some reason, suddenly gets irritated with her more often, assigning her more work. It seems like his temper is quite childish. However, Kang Min-ki-yeon promises herself that she will try her best. After all, she is very capable. Lost in her work, it's already 1 p.m., and she hasn't had lunch yet. The workload has completely consumed her mind. In his office, Seok contemplates and remembers the dark circles under her eyes. She seems to have lost some weight lately, looking tired. Seok feels a bit guilty about the overwhelming workload he has assigned her recently. However, the feeling of pity is quickly overshadowed. Seok is her superior, and assigning tasks is his prerogative. Trying to console himself, as Seok stands up, he walks into her office, searching with his eyes, but doesn't find her there. Seok looks down at her desk, finding a lunchbox she hasn't finished eating. Perhaps she was in a hurry. Next to it is a half-eaten chocolate bar, probably her favorite. Seok mutters to himself, "If you're tired, just say you're tired." It's really foolish. Seok strides off to find Kang Min-ki-yeon, determined to scold her. He searches in the M&A project department. 2 employees bow their heads to greet him, and such a high-profile figure visiting likely indicates something important. They continuously praise him, saying he cares about the project, and the work progress is excellent. Thanks to his guidance, everyone has been working efficiently. Even Ms. Kang is very competent, she knows everything, and her productivity is impressive. Seok is pleased to hear the compliments for Kang Min-ki-yeon. He smiles warmly and asks, "Where is my deputy secretary Kang Min-ki-yeon?" They reply, "In the TF department, sir." Seok quickly walks over there, wearing an annoyed expression. Again, he's headed there. Standing outside the door, the scene Seok sees is Kang Min-ki-yeon discussing with 2 lawyers. Her friend Hoo In-sung is even leaning in close to her, enthusiastically discussing terms displayed on the computer screen. They look very diligent. And it truly makes one uncomfortable. Is it necessary to stand so close like that? Seok mumbles. He scowls, opens the door, and steps into the room, catching everyone's surprised gaze. Seok calls for Secretary Kong Min-ki-yeon, noting that she seems quite busy. Kong Min-ki-yeon greets the director with a smile, mentioning they are completing data transfer. Lawyer Jin-soo expresses gratitude to Kong Min-ki-yeon for their assistance. He explains her presence, stating he requested documents from her and needed her to check the reports. They speak highly of Kong Min-ki-yeon's capabilities. Seok smiles faintly, saying, "Our deputy director Kong is very capable." Then, turning to Kong Min-ki-yeon with an angry look, he says, "Deputy Director Kong. Are you not busy enough that you have to come here to work? Is the documentation for the construction material order almost done? And the expansion of the power plant in Saudi, have you completed it?" Kong Min-ki-yeon bows and states she has completed all those tasks. She provides a detailed report on each task to him. She mentions that the document retrieval for the power plant will be finished by 3 p.m. Having no more grounds to criticize her, Seok remarks, "Only by 3 p.m.? Don't you know how to prioritize your tasks?" This irrational behavior exhausts Kong Min-ki-yeon, and Hu In-sung feels frustrated on her behalf. Seok turns back to address Hu In-sung, "Lawyer Hu In-sung, your office should handle those documents. We hired your firm for that purpose. Is your associate the executive secretary of TK's manufacturing company, right?" Hu In-sung remains silent, not wanting to cause trouble for Kong Min-ki-yeon. He gently says, "I have caused inconvenience to the director's work. I apologize for my oversight." Seok, still irritated, replies, "Yes." After speaking, he calls Kong Min-ki-yeon to follow him outside. She quickly exits the room with worry, and Seok follows. Before closing the door, he turns back, now wearing the victorious smile of a bully. He comforts the employees, "You've worked hard, do well in your tasks." A quieter sentence directed at himself, "Don't touch my secretary." Then, he throws a hostile look at lawyer Hu In-sung. On the other side, the disdain is evident on Hu In-sung's face. Seok has truly gone too far with Kong Min-ki-yeon. Hu In-sung suppresses his anger. In his memories, Kong Min-ki-yeon is a unique treasure. Someone he spent his childhood protecting, playing, and picking wild strawberries with. Then, one day, she entered high school, while he went to Seoul for studies, and later, he enlisted in the military. Before entering the military, she said she would wait for him. Only with him around could she go to school with peace of mind. They could have become a couple if he hadn't cowardly left, avoiding his own emotions. Outside the company office, Kong Min-ki-yeon is running late for lunch. She is exhausted and hungry. Both she and Seok have been working frantically to organize the new project. Although the progress is relatively stable, she is truly worn out. Kong Min-ki-yeon goes to the convenience store to find a quick lunch, but the shelves are empty, and there's nothing to eat. Every employee in the company seems to have bought the makeshift meals, leaving nothing for her. Kong Min-ki-yeon searches the snack section and finds a pack of edible-looking pastries. Fortunately, they are also on sale, providing her with a small comfort. Just then, Seok's voice rings out beside her, and he approaches, asking, "What are you doing there?" "Oh, Director, She begins. Seok grabs the pastry from her hand, heads to the checkout, looking completely dejected. Holding a beer bottle, he pays for both items. They bring the items to a nearby stone chair to eat. Under the cool shade of the trees, the fatigue seems to alleviate a bit. Seok opens his beer, takes a large gulp without saying anything, then licks the drops from the bottle neck, surprising Kong Min-ki-yeon. Seeing that Kong Min-ki-yeon remains silent, Seok becomes perplexed. Maybe the way he was taught to drink by Seok last time wasn't as effective in seducing women, that jerk. Seok honestly says that some people drink like that, and although the quality seems a bit poor, it tastes good when consumed from the bottle. Seok can't admit the true purpose of the bottle-licking action from earlier. Kong Minki-yeon, no longer surprised, opens her pastry and asks, "Is your digestion not good?" This statement truly makes him hate his cousin Seok to the point of going insane. What fascination is this, making her think he's sick? Looking at the small package in Kong Minki-yeon's hand, which contains a chocolate bar she often eats, he wonders if she remembers this type from the time when they were trained employees. She hands him one. Back then, they weren't close at all, yet he remembers the type of food she likes. There was a time when they were very young, sitting together outdoors with the team. She gave him a piece of candy, saying it's her favorite chocolate. She claimed it was of excellent quality, 100 grams, yet very affordable, and tasted much better than other dried fruits. Watching her eat it, Seok's gaze was quite focused, and he hasn't forgotten that image over the years. It turns out he has always been keeping an eye on her, unchanged since that day. Late at night, after work, Kong Minki-yeon heads towards the elevator, waiting for it in the lobby. Kong Minki-yeon, Hu In-sung calls her. Today, he is also working overtime. Hu In-sung greets her with a smile, helping her with her bag and documents. The two agree to have dinner together at a nearby restaurant. Kong Minki-yeon feels relieved around this older brother-like figure. It feels like having a real sibling. Since the first day she started here, he had planned to invite her to dinner, but Director Kong was too busy, and he teased her. "Sorry, Mr. Lawyer," she responded with a friendly smile. In the barbecue restaurant, Kong Minki-yeon becomes lively and animated, expressing her joy for the food. She shares everyday stories from the company with Hu In-sung, feeling a sense of camaraderie with him. As if reliving those moments, she takes a deep breath and receives a cup of water from him. Don't endure hunger. No matter how busy you are, it weakens your body. Eat more. Hu In-sung takes care of her, just like he always has since they were young. As he speaks, he grills food and serves her a lot. The stomach-filling and cheerful dinner comes to an end. Hu In-sung drives Kong Minki-yeon back home. On the way, Kong Minki-yeon, like a child, complains about the company. She says she doesn't want to go home. Hearing this, Hu In-sung involuntarily says, "Me neither." Kong Minki-yeon continues, expressing her fear of going home, where after a short sleep, she has to go back to work the next day. So that's why. The reason for not wanting to go home might be a bit different for him, but luckily, he hasn't mentioned it. Kong Minki-yeon has grown up. The conversation continues like this. Kong Minki-yeon complains, not understanding why Director Seok got angry like that in the TF department earlier today. Hu In-sung laughs, saying, "Maybe it's because of me." Kong Minki-yeon suddenly recalls this morning, when sitting outside, he asked her and Sung about their relationship. She replied that she and Sung are close neighbors since childhood. But maybe she said something wrong, so Seok became upset immediately. Kong Minki-yeon asks Hu In-sung, "Is it because of our personal relationship that he misunderstood that I'm helping you, and that's why he got angry?" With an IQ of 2000, Kong Minki-yeon suddenly raises another question. Could something have happened between them at the hotel that day? Hu In-sung doesn't answer that question. He also remembers Seok's attitude at the hotel the other day. While he was escorting Kong Minki-yeon to her room, Seok ran up, held his hand, and questioned him about his relationship with Kong Minki-yeon and why he was following her into the room. At that time, Hu In-sung didn't back down either. He retorted, "So if the director brings her in, is it okay? It doesn't seem like there's any relationship between me and Kong Minki-yeon." Having said that, Hu In-sung draped Kong Minki-yeon over his shoulder and guided her to the elevator, heading to the room that Seok had booked for her earlier. In the suspicious and helpless eyes of Seok, many thoughts arise in In-sung's mind. While escorting her to the room, the girl threw her shoes on the floor, running around the room half-conscious, half-drunk, excited about the luxurious furnishings of the upscale hotel. Sung looks at the double bed with two pristine white pillows, and various emotions uncontrollably surge within him. At this moment, Kong Minky-yoon struggles to unbutton the coat Seok gave her earlier. There are a few buttons she can't undo. Seok rushes to help her, unbuttoning the long coat. But when he finally undoes the last buttons, the sight inside completely unnerves him. Some remaining rationality awakens in Seok, and he scolds Kong Minky-yoon, asking how she could drink so much. What if she encountered bad people? Although he says so, it has no effect on Kong Minky-yoon at this moment. She's already drunk and retorts, "What are you saying?" before entering the bathroom. Hearing the water inside, Seok sits down on the bed, covering his face, trying to keep himself sober, muttering, "I could be very bad too." And the story stops there. Returning to reality, Seok reassures Kong Minky-yoon, saying that there's nothing to worry about. Perhaps director Seok's personality is a bit strange, and that's why he acted that way. Kong Minky-yoon agrees with him, recounting the foolish things Seok has done, making Seok burst into laughter. In reality, the foolish one is her. Seok sits in the driver's seat, thinking about Kong Minky-yoon's superior, feeling very uncomfortable about that person. The next day, another exhausting overtime day, as usual, for Kong Minky-yoon. She finishes her last task of the day and receives a call from Seok. They decide to have dinner in 30 minutes. Her phone lists his name in the contacts under the letter A, indicating top priority in her contact list. Perhaps they call each other every day. Kong Minky-yoon continued working while talking about the Chinese restaurant where they planned to have dinner, mentioning the delicious dish Rin Ki with an excited and cheerful tone. However, this scene was spotted by director Seok, and there was no way he would let the dinner appointment proceed smoothly. Seok returned to the office, approached Kong Minky-yoon's desk, and overheard her mentioning the dinner plan. "Is the director not back yet?" Kong Minky-yoon asked. "I'm planning to work overtime," Seok replied with a triumphant tone. "I haven't said anything yet. The entire project, including the construction of the power plant and related energy services and commerce, will undergo changes. The schedule for tomorrow will also be adjusted. So, the appointment with the power plant." Seok cunningly continued discussing the packed schedule awaiting Kong Minky-yoon. This obviously forced her to call Seok to cancel their dinner appointment. "Are you planning to have dinner with that person?" Seok asked with the most insincere tone. This time, Kong Minky-yoon genuinely got angry, her face wrinkled, and she remained silent. "If you have an appointment, just go. Have you received all the required documents from the relevant files? Leave them with me." Seok tried to console her. "I still haven't finished," Kong Minky-yoon admitted. Indeed, the workload was overwhelming, and even if Seok didn't intentionally sabotage her dinner appointment, she was already too occupied with work, leaving many tasks incomplete. Seok put his hand on the table, nonchalantly saying, "Just give me the documents, only the documents. Let the director handle the overtime." "How can that be?" "Director, I will do it." Kong Minky-yoon had no choice but to stay late. With a triumphant smile on his lips, Seok said, "Okay then, please don't bother." Having said that, he returned to his office. Seok scratched his head, realizing he had made a mistake. Originally, he noticed that Kong Minky-yoon often worked overtime, skipped meals, and ate chocolate to stave off hunger. He planned to wait until she finished work and pretend to return to the office. He intended to order plenty of delicious food for her. However, the plan ended up like this. Originally, he intended to come and take care of her, but in the end, he made her work overtime. Seok mumbled to himself, "Why did I have to schedule the dinner with him today? I wonder if Kong Minky-yoon is angry. Look at her dissatisfied face." Seok thought again, maybe if delicious food was delivered, she might not be angry anymore. Later, Seok entered the assistant's office, specifying the menu he requested from Restaurant F for her. Kong Minky-yoon made a call to the restaurant, ordering the dishes mentioned on the note he wrote, in larger quantities than usual, for 2 servings. Remembering that she brought the mushroom dish last time, he instructed her to order more, even though he didn't particularly like the dish. He had noticed that she seemed to enjoy it last time, so perhaps she liked it. After placing the food order over the phone, Kang Min-ki-yeon, feeling tired, stood up and forced a smile. "Director, may I go grab a quick bite and come back?" Before leaving, she added that she would return before the restaurant delivered the food and bring it into his office. Just a few minutes later, Kang Min-ki-yeon returned, and it was unclear what she had eaten so quickly. Restaurant F delivered the food, and she brought it in for him. "Director, the food has arrived," she lightly knocked on the door. Seok was working, genuinely focused on his tasks without any pretense. Calling her, Seok said, "Deputy Director, there seems to be a discrepancy in this part of the document. Can you explain it a bit?" Saying so, he stood up, asking her to sit in his chair. "Sit down." He moved to another chair nearby, holding the documents while she checked them on the computer, cross-referencing each item. Seok put the document down, propped his chin, and asked, "What did you eat to look even hungrier? Having chocolate again today?" Kang Min-ki-yeon didn't answer, busy and already exhausted. Seok put his portion of food on the table. He ate a plate of salad and placed the mushroom soup in front of her, saying, "Eat." Kang Min-ki-yeon declined, saying, "I'm fine. I won't eat the director's portion." Seok hurriedly said, "I won't eat it. I'll have the salad." Feeling embarrassed, Kang Min-ki-yeon said, "Then let me order something else." Seeing Seok's displeasure, she slowly lifted the spoon and ate the soup he placed in front of her. Involuntarily, at a fairly close distance, she smelled his familiar cologne. The scent resembled the first time she met him at the hotel, and every time she smelled it, she felt nauseous and emotionally overwhelmed. Kang Min-ki-yeon pondered while eating, silently listening to his small talk. On the bus ride back home, she still thought about her feelings when having dinner with him at the company. The way he looked at her, his back, the scent of his cologne, the way he ate, the playful banter, everything made her feel nauseous. Kang Min-ki-yeon tried to explain this strange emotion, and she came up with a convincing reason: maybe she was just full. She opened her laptop to work right on the bus to save some time. The door to her apartment opened, and she, tired, said, "Seong, I'm back." To her surprise, there were 2 people at the door, Seong and Hoon-sung. They didn't have dinner together at the restaurant, so Seong came to her place to find her. "You still haven't left?" Kang Min-ki-yeon asked. Sung reached out and touched her cheek, smiling, "I was waiting for you." They had dinner together, ate fried chicken, had some Coca-Cola, watched TV, and chatted. Kang Min-ki-yeon sighed about work, mentioning the unreasonable and peculiar demands from the director. Seong, feeling sad, commented, "We live together, but haven't seen each other much lately." Kang Min-ki-yeon replied, "Because you often go out drinking." Seong hugged her tightly, exclaiming, "My Kang Min-ki-yeon, your face has become half its size. Are you eating enough?" She suggested having dinner together, and she mentioned she wouldn't eat Seong's chicken thigh as she had a bit at the company. She also shared that her director had bought her dinner. Hearing this, Hoon-sung was surprised, while Seong rambled on about scenarios and explanations for what happened at the company, interpreting the situations Kang Min-ki-yeon described when they had dinner together. Seong said that overtime was just an excuse to have dinner together. However, Kang Min-ki-yeon teased him, saying, "Have you watched too much Oh My Venus?" Kang Min-ki-yeon finished the story, putting to rest her friend's speculations. "Moreover, the director said he doesn't like me. He mentioned it the last time." While narrating, Kang Min-ki-yeon's eyes showed a hint of sadness. "Maybe today he just wanted to apologize for making me work overtime." Seong found this convincing, but it seemed less convincing to lawyer Hoon-sung, who was also a man. Thinking about Seok, Kang Min-ki-yeon couldn't help but wonder, wasn't she the one who was infatuated with him? Beautiful face, perfect figure, a gentle yet masculine voice, deep gaze, and those moments when he smiled in the suburbs. Seok, sitting next to her, rambled on for a while, saying that Seok was his ideal type. Seok also wanted such a handsome boss. But Kang Min-ki-yeon, with a serious expression, said that an attractive superior was like a Shiba dog, it would growl at her for no reason, despite being cute. If he had to take care of that dog for 10 hours every day, he would get tired. Seok found this reasonable and decided to stop trying to matchmake Kang Min-ki-yeon with Seok. Kang Min-ki-yeon said that if she was too tired, she could transfer to another department. But if she quit without working properly, her self-esteem and the respect for her work wouldn't allow it. So, she would persist, and eventually, Seok would have to acknowledge her. She spoke with a determined face. Seok, who had been quiet all this time, just drank his soft drink without saying anything. Later, he bid the two girls farewell and left. Sleep well, you too. Kang Min-ki-yeon, see you at the company tomorrow. Wait a moment, Kang Min-ki-yeon called after him. She had already put on her coat, saying she would accompany him outside. She had eaten a lot of chicken thighs and felt a bit indigestible, she needed to buy some medicine. Outside on the street, the two walked together for a while. Kang Min-ki-yeon asked, "It's almost a month since you returned to Korea, right? Time flies." "Yeah, it feels like we were still in school together just yesterday," Seok replied. Kang Min-ki-yeon smiled, now, working in the same company, meeting each other, going home together, having dinner, and chatting, it feels like we're reliving those school days. Back then, you taught me so many things. Seok stopped, turning to face her, now it seems like a lot has changed. Seok recalled when Kang Min-ki-yeon first entered university at the age of 17, topping her class. This drew curiosity and envy from many other students. At that time, Seok was also attending the same university, making her feel less out of place in this unfamiliar environment. He took care of her, even accompanying her to university. Seok often patted her head, like an older brother to a younger sister. They were so close that Seok's girlfriend at the time got jealous. Once, after finishing work, Seok hurriedly dressed and went to Kang Min-ki-yeon's place to buy food for her. This drove his girlfriend, who was expecting a romantic date, crazy. The explanation that Kang Min-ki-yeon had just arrived in Seoul and needed his care didn't convince her. She felt like she was intruding on their relationship, and that led to their breakup. The young man stood under the streetlight, contemplating the complexities of adulthood. He looked at the crack in the road, something that couldn't be fixed, just like their relationship. So, he decided it was time to break up. Seok also received a call to enlist in the military. Time passed quickly. When he finished his service, the petite girl he left behind had grown much more mature and now brought along a new close friend named Seok. When he welcomed Seok's discharge, Kang Min-ki-yeon held a small rose, looking a bit embarrassed. She had just been confessed to by a schoolmate. And so, the story continued. One day, Kang Min-ki-yeon was abandoned by her boyfriend because she focused too much on studying and working. She lay in bed crying her heart out. Seok entered, used his hand to wipe away her tears, and comforted her. Seok recalled that even from a young age, he had always been more mature than her, taking a step ahead. From childhood, he had been accustomed to taking care of Kang Min-ki-yeon, caring for and loving her. Unable to contain his emotions any longer, Seok turned Kang Min-ki-yeon, who was buried under the blanket. He pulled her out, placing both hands on her shoulders, facing her. Suddenly, both felt a bit awkward. Seok stepped back, saying there was nothing. Then he left. He walked away, distancing himself, determined to leave her and avoid his own emotions. He didn't want to break their close relationship. Returning to the present, tonight's scene was quite similar to the day he broke up with his girlfriend, standing there smoking under the streetlight. Seok looked at Kang Min-ki-yeon, questioning or speculating, "When did you grow up?" Their story didn't go further, and Seok left. A long and emotionally complex day came to an end for Kang Min-ki-yeon. She didn't notice a strange message sent to her from Mrs. Seon, Seok's mother. She urged Kong Minky-yeon to come 30 minutes early the next morning. When picking up director Tae-sip, she had something to discuss privately with her. The next morning, Kong Minky-yeon arrived at the Tae-sip family mansion. A maid escorted her to the family's living room. Mrs. Seon was already waiting there. She was an eloquent and modern woman, respected by everyone, including Tae-sip's stern grandfather. Kong Minky-yeon felt anxious, not knowing why she was summoned here. However, upon meeting Mrs. Seon, she felt reassured. Mrs. Seon was beautiful, and Tae-sip inherited that beauty from her. Breakfast was already prepared for her on the table. Mrs. Seon kindly asked if Kong Minky-yeon found it difficult to be reassigned as the secretary for her son. She inquired whether working with Tae-sip was too exhausting for her. Of course, Kong Minky-yeon never dared to speak the truth about her feelings. She politely expressed her honor and joy at having the opportunity to work in that capacity. Mrs. Seon smiled, satisfied, expressing her happiness that Kong Minky-yeon had helped her son work diligently and achieve good results. She thanked her for that. They talked about Tae-sip, his picky eating habits, his good looks, and more. After a while, Mrs. Seon got to the main point and asked Kong Minky-yeon for a small favor. Upstairs, Tsu-jeon entered to inform Tae-sip that Kong Minky-yeon had arrived to pick him up. Tae-sip hastily adjusted his attire, fixed his tie, and sprayed a bit of cologne. Tsu-jeon teased him, asking if he was going on a date. Tae-sip mentioned a meeting, but she didn't believe him. She continuously questioned the situation between him and Kong Minky-yeon. Tae-sip, frustrated, stated that he had no interest in her and that they were only working together due to their job responsibilities, regardless of gender. This statement made Tsu-jeon truly stop, realizing that her brother didn't pay attention to Kong Minky-yeon in that way. In the lobby, Mrs. Seon continued her conversation. She mentioned knowing about Tae-sip fainting the day before and expressed her concern. She was worried because Tae-sip's father had high expectations for his position in the TK conglomerate and didn't want any health or reputation issues for him. Tae-sip's mother loved her son dearly, feeling distressed for not being able to protect him from such pressures. At this moment, the two siblings, Tae-sip and Tsu-jeon, descended the stairs. The younger sister cheerfully greeted Kong Minky-yeon like a close friend. Kong Minky-yeon bowed and greeted Tae-sip, "Good morning, Director." This statement made the two siblings pause for a moment. The distance between them was indeed significant. Mrs. Seon hurriedly approached her son, asking about his well-being and advising him to take care of his health. The warm family atmosphere left Kong Minky-yeon feeling moved, reminiscing about her own family in the countryside. Back at the company, Kim, the assistant, worriedly handed a box to Kong Minky-yeon, suggesting that maybe convincing Mrs. Seon would be easier then. Kong Minky-yeon accepted the box, her face tense, stating that she had to try. This earned her great admiration from Kim, as Kong Minky-yeon was truly competent and brave. Entering the room with many expectations, Kong Minky-yeon placed a garlic-shaped vase, her favorite item, on the table. It was a memento of garlic-themed things she loved, from her phone case to various other belongings. What was it that made Tae-sip fearful and worried when Kong Minky-yeon approached with the medicine? Secretary Kong smiled and cheerfully explained that it was a special herbal medicine for the transitional weather. It was a traditional medicine specially formulated over 3 consecutive days and nights with extremely rare ingredients, crafted by a long-standing family in the medical field. Curious about the origin of the medicine and the bottle in front of him, Tae-sip inquired further. Kong Minky-yeon happily explained that because the medicine had a strong taste, she had put it in a glass bottle to reduce the smell and prevent Tae-sip from feeling repulsed when taking it. The sealed bottle would hide everything inside. Kong Minky-yeon used all her patience and gentleness developed over the 10 years of working to persuade the man in front of her. After all, this was Mrs. Seon's request, and there was a considerable bonus involved. She brought the medicine bottle close to his face, saying that it wasn't bitter and had no smell. Kong Minky-yun added a secret ingredient to make it easier to drink. The secret ingredient was black sugar, a technique she used to give the medicine a more pleasant taste. Tae-sip reluctantly tasted the medicine, and surprisingly, it worked like magic. The medicine instantly made him alert after the first sip. Although the taste was hard to swallow, Tae-sip complained, questioning whether Kong Minky-yun was teasing him. She tried to convince him, saying the taste was pleasant. "Do you find this scent pleasant?" Kong Minky-yun asked. Tae-sip, this time, approached her slowly. Now it was her turn to feel frightened. He was angry, she thought. She nervously explained, "It's a fragrance similar to the cologne you often use. I think you'll like it." Kong Minky-yun continued to persuade him with concern, trying to get him to continue drinking. Amused, Tae-sip suddenly stopped intimidating her and burst into laughter. How could someone do things like this? He snatched the water bottle from Kong Minky-yun's hand and drank it all in one go. She wondered how he could change his attitude so quickly. Tae-sip, having swallowed the medicine with the terrible taste, wanted to vomit. Kong Minky-yun quickly unwrapped a small candy and stuffed it into his mouth. The sensation of her finger touching his lips left both of them stunned. Kong Minky-yun withdrew her hand and held it close to her chest to control her racing heartbeat. Tae-sip mockingly asked, "Do you want some candy? Take your medicine." He pushed the medicine bottle toward Kong Minky-yun, warning her not to tease him. She hesitated, fearing the medicine's strong scent, and withdrew. Tae-sip laughed, saying, "You want some candy, don't you? Just take the medicine." Kong Minky-yun retorted, "I don't." Tae-sip spontaneously commented, "How adorable." "Oh, I meant this bottle is cute," he defended himself awkwardly. Kong Minky-yun burst into genuine laughter, relieved. "So, the director likes it, right? This is the first time someone has liked it," she exclaimed joyfully. A moment later, she presented him with a pen shaped like garlic, almost like a reward for a child after taking medicine. For 10 years at the company, Tae-sip had always concealed his tactics behind unpredictable smiles, negotiating forcefully to exploit the weaknesses of others and secure victories. Now, he was questioning a subordinate in a brief meeting, asking why the goal-setting rate was so low, stating that this wasn't a small local store. As the subordinates hesitated to answer, Tae-sip pressed on, inquiring about the current sales figures. Seeing their confusion, he lightly chuckled, saying, "Do I have to remember even these things for you guys?" As an innate businessman with managerial talent, he was always straightforward and determined. Tae-sip turned to Kong Minky-yun, Secretary Kong. He seemed pensive, pulling out the garlic-shaped pen, an unusual item in his otherwise sophisticated lifestyle. This unexpected accessory left everyone perplexed. Tae-sip slowly reviewed and corrected the business report submitted by the subordinates. He then handed the revised report back to Kong Minky-yun, instructing her to convey the modified content to the others. Tae-sip turned back to the group, calmly stating, "Bitter medicine is good for your health. You have to take bitter medicine to stay strong. As for candy, you can buy it at small stores." Such casual remarks struck a chord with the concerned subordinates. They thought the young director was truly exceptional, understanding what they were thinking. However, Tae-sip's cold and detached management style left them dissatisfied. As they walked back to Secretary Kang's desk, both of them expressed their frustration openly. Shortly after, the medicine was brought to him. Kong Minky-yun knocked on the door, "Director, it's time to take your medicine." Tae-sip frowned, "Don't like it. It's terrible." Kong Minky-yun cheerfully reiterated the educative words she used earlier in the meeting, "Bitter medicine is good for your health." Tae-sip, fearful, pressed against the chair's backrest, covering his mouth with his hand. But Kong Minky-yun didn't let him off the hook. She pulled his hand away, placed the bottle near his mouth, and insisted he take the medicine, making it impossible for Tae-sip to avoid any longer. In her eyes, Tae-sip was truly like a child, creating a whirlwind of emotions within her. Kong Minki-yoon went to the production department. The employees there were curious about director Seok visiting their section in person. High-ranking executives like him were rarely seen, and they even mistook him for a model. Several female employees surrounded her, expressing envy for getting to be with him every day. Kong Minki-yoon felt somewhat awkward, not knowing how to handle such gossip. It wasn't until lawyer Hu In-sung rescued her that she could leave. And so, the work continued, consuming Kong Minki-yoon's time and everyone else's. Unbeknownst to her, Kong Minki-yoon began to pay more attention to Seok, observing his actions and gestures. Seok did the same. Once, he noticed her standing at the meeting room door, and as he walked past, he gently tapped her cheek with his hand, then continued walking. Kong Minki-yoon stood there, watching him, momentarily stirred. Reflecting on Seok's treatment towards her, Kong Minki-yoon found herself confused. Seok, who acted like a child in front of her, still kept a considerable distance, always causing misunderstandings. As she contemplated, she tied her shoelaces, preparing for a jog. Running was her way of organizing her thoughts. She put on her headphones and began her journey. Today, she needed to clear her mind. Even when Seok teased her, each time he smiled with that captivating expression, she couldn't help but wonder, am I really special to him? Lost in these thoughts, Kong Minki-yoon heard a familiar voice behind her, Deputy Director. It was Seok, also in workout attire, running after her. Department. The employees there were curious about Director Seok visiting their section in person. High-ranking executives like him were rarely seen, and they even mistook him for a model. Director, she called out. I've been calling you from over there, he said, out of breath. Kong Minki-yoon had been lost in her thoughts, wearing earphones, and he'd been calling and chasing her for a while. Apologizing out of habit, Kong Minki-yoon said, I'm sorry. No problem, Seok said. I'm glad I ran into you here. Oh, does Deputy Director also live nearby? We're practically neighbors. Yet, we rarely meet. I've been running here quite often lately, Seok said, noticing Kong Minki-yoon's youthful and beautiful appearance. She expressed surprise, mentioning her recent fatigue as the reason for not jogging. Seok shared that he started running here to relieve stress and clear his messy thoughts. She found it delightful that he shared a similar interest. Thinking about Seok's recent actions, Kong Minki-yoon couldn't help but feel touched. A Seok acting like a child in front of her, though distant, always led to misunderstandings. Seok asked her, what were you thinking about while running today? With expectant eyes, he awaited an answer, the least romantic one in this romantic setting. She replied that she was contemplating the advertising plan submitted earlier. Clearly, it was an insufficient answer. That answer marked the end of their conversation. As no one moved forward, they both chose to run away from each other, creating more distance between them. Seok wished her a pleasant weekend and left. Seok, running back to the starting point, pondered whether everything would be different if he hadn't been the heir to the conglomerate 10 years ago. The following Monday at the TF department, lawyer Lee proudly showed off his engagement ring, proudly declaring that he was engaged. The room congratulated him on marrying his high school sweetheart in March of this year. A girl sighed that all the good men were taken, while an elderly colleague in the room pointed at Hu In-sung, introducing the only remaining handsome young man in the department. He hadn't married yet. The elderly man eagerly mentioned that he could introduce a potential spouse for him. The excited girls were thrilled with the news that lawyer Sung was still single. However, doubts arose among the girls, suggesting that he might be dating Secretary Kong. At that moment, Kong Minki-yoon stepped in to dispel the rumors, confirming that they were just good friends. A senior male colleague commented that a close relationship like the one between lawyer Sung and Deputy Director Kong might not be a bad thing. He believed that marrying someone you're close to would create even stronger bonds. This made Kong Minki-yoon ponder a bit. Should she really marry someone who feels like family? Hu In-sung came to her aid, suggesting that the colleague's comment might make things awkward for her. He chuckled awkwardly and asked if she didn't like him at all. Hu In-sung jokingly warned the senior colleague that such comments might be considered workplace harassment. He suggested dropping the subject, as other employees might misunderstand. The playful remark left the senior colleague frightened, and he immediately changed the topic. Lawyer Song's words were always serious like that. During lunchtime, Kang Min-ki-yeon and Hu In-sung went to buy drinks together. As they walked and talked, Song mentioned that maybe they were getting too old to discuss love affairs. He shared that his mother wanted him to get married and that he just needed to find the right person. Kang Min-ki-yeon asked, "Your mom wants you to get engaged and married?" She thought for a moment and continued, "But marriage should start with a romantic relationship, right? However, we're too busy, we don't have time for romance." Just as she finished speaking, the figure of director Seok appeared in the crowd. Even in the sea of people, she seemed to spot him, his familiar figure standing out to her. His presence was also quite noticeable, as the employees immediately started gossiping about him. In the midst of the bustling crowd, Seok recognized Kang Min-ki-yeon, standing next to Hu In-sung. Walking past them, Seok, Kang Min-ki-yeon, and Lawyer Hu greeted him. As Seok walked by, Kang Min-ki-yeon and Lawyer Hu bowed to him. Seok, accompanied by a business partner, walked past them. He glanced at her, didn't stop, and continued walking. Behind them, Kang Min-ki-yeon heard a business partner saying to him, "I heard the grass at an NAL is beautiful. Director T has been there, haven't you? Let's try it before the golf season ends." He replied, "Sure." They gradually disappeared, and behind them, Hu In-sung and Kang Min-ki-yeon each had different thoughts. Hu In-sung placed his hand on Kang Min-ki-yeon's shoulder, seemingly comforting her, and asked, "What's wrong? Shall we go?" She nodded, and Hu In-sung put his arm around her shoulder, guiding her back to the office. From a distance, Seok turned his head to look back. The sight of the two of them together made him feel desperate and frustrated. As they bid farewell to the business partner leaving the company, Seok returned to the office. Alone now, he seemed to be on the verge of madness. Feelings of jealousy and anger overwhelmed him. He silently cursed Lawyer Hu In-sung. Who was he to touch Kang Min-ki-yeon? That damn guy. While holding her head in frustration, there was a sound of the door opening outside. Kang Min-ki-yeon walked in carrying the documents she wanted to present to him. She gently announced, "The afternoon schedule includes a review to finalize Project B, followed by an internal meeting with department heads, then a visit to the Suwon branch, and finally approval of the audit report." Seok interrupted her, "Miss Kang Min-ki-yeon." His voice was full of irritation as he stood up and approached her. "Regardless of how close or romantically involved you two are, please prioritize work at the company." The threatening tone caught Kang Min-ki-yeon off guard, making her freeze. Seok continued, "Do you not realize the special relationship between the director's personal secretary and the company's lawyer? What do you think people will say?" Kang Min-ki-yeon tried to explain that they only had a very close relationship, but not as intimate as he thought. Seok, furious, sneered, "Two people staying in the same hotel room, what else could people think?" He regretted his harsh words as soon as they left his mouth. Kang Min-ki-yeon, without explaining, just bowed her head and said, "Yes." This made him genuinely furious. After a tiresome and frustrating day, Kang Min-ki-yeon returned home. Just after finishing a shower, the doorbell rang. It was Seok returning. She shared her fortunate experiences during her overseas business trip. Seok gave Kang Min-ki-yeon a beautiful scarf. Seok put it on her, making her look feminine. Seok advised her to take better care of herself and not to be too stressed when dealing with Seok. Kang Min-ki-yeon nodded and confessed that she hated him because he was the director.